Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris. Lynne Golodner, welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me.
You wear a lot of different hats. We're going to specifically kind of go down one route today, and that is a brand new book that just came out, was just published September 26th, Woman of Valor. I'm interested about learning more about, obviously, Woman of Valor, how that came to be, but more of the behind the scenes and lessons to be learned. How, are there things in there woven in that we can apply to ourselves? Mm-hmm. So wherever you want to start, go for it.
So it's not the first novel that I've written. It's the first novel that has been published. But I started writing it in 2011, and I wrote about 60 pages and got stuck. And so I put it aside, and, I have 4 kids. I'm married. I had a busy life in my business and stuff. And so fast forward 10 years, in 2021, I picked it back up and said, the bones of this story are good, but I really needed to change a lot of things to where I am now. I think I needed time for my writing skills to strengthen and deepen, and fiction is a whole different ballgame. You're creating worlds and characters, and you need to take the story arc from start to finish. There's a lot that goes into it. So, writing a nonfiction book as a former journalist is no big deal. I have all the information in front of me and I can write the book, and, that's great. But I really wanted to write a beautiful story, a compelling story. I wanted other people to be interested. And the main character, Sally, is from Michigan, and she moves to Chicago, and she becomes Orthodox in Judaism. And that's a choice that she makes. And I wanted the book to show real life in the Orthodox world. And I wanted her to love it, because we have so many books and TV shows and movies about people who are in religious communities and they hate it. And so that story has been done, and I didn't really want to contribute to that. But the reality of any kind of community is that there's good and there's bad, and you have to make a choice to deal with it if you want to stay. And so I really worked on that with Sally. She has a husband. She loves him, love of her life. They have 3 kids. Everything's groovy. And then one of her kids is abused at school, and she's, of course, devastated, as is her husband, but they respond differently in how they want to react and proceed. And that's around the time that her ex-boyfriend pops into her life on Facebook. And so it's all like a perfect storm. And it's like, what will she choose? Which direction will she go? And so I will say that I spent 10 years as an Orthodox Jew myself. I did leave that community, but I know a lot about it, and I did even more research to make this believable in fiction. But it is totally fiction. This is not me. It's not. There was nothing like that happened to my kids. Thank God. Nothing like that. And so, yeah, the story is full of love and passion. There's a very passionate marriage between her and her husband, which I also was deliberate about, because you don't think of religious people in that way. And I wanted to show that a marriage can be that intense, that closeness, that beautiful relationship, even if you're in a restrictive community, and yes, there's infidelity, there's abuse, there's, somebody has described the book as suspenseful, which I love, which I didn't intend, but I think that's so cool. And there's friendship, but it's really a story of identity and choosing who we want to be and how we respond to community pressures, which all of us face, and how we build a life that we love to live. So that's what this story is about.
And that is exactly what I want you to hit on more. So if we are getting the behind the scenes kind of look at the book, mm-hmm. and I think when you say, like your identity in the community, first off, I should probably back up. I love the fact that it is not another story about, all of the totally bad and ugly of, different religions and how you get out, because until you said that, I thought, oh my goodness, it's so true. There's a million of those stories, but where's the other side? And there's also a lot of real life in the book, real life, relatable things that we all deal with. And I really picked up on the fact that it doesn't matter your religion. It doesn't, it's like, it doesn't matter your race, the culture you're in, and all this and that. We all deal with the same stuff, the same internal stuff. And I think a book like this really can open up a lot of eyes to be more accepting of everybody. And why do we feel like we live in this bubble of, this is only happening to us. We only feel this way. It's so easy to get caught in that bubble.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit, I'm going to stick with one word, and that is the identity. So talk a little bit more about, her identity and how it plays out. And, I guess I'm curious because I do see this a lot in women, and probably in in the religion, culture part of it, but just in everyday life with her, and how does she stay true to her identity? Does she feel these pulls? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Sally grew up in Michigan, like I said, and she's the daughter of one of the senators from Michigan. And her mother was born Jewish, was raised that way, but they didn't do anything. And her father isn't. And so they really were very much like in the Christian mainstream. And even though she had her mother's grandparents who were very Jewish and wanted to be in touch with, her and her siblings, her mother really sort of limited that. And so growing up, she sort of doesn't know who she is. She's in the shadow of a father who's a senator, and she, and her mother is the senator's wife, and they're very public facing. And so, when she moves to Chicago, she's writing for a magazine there, and, she really has no idea who she is. She gets an assignment to cover local ethnic communities in Chicagoland. And the first one is the Orthodox community of Skokie, which is a suburb. And so she's like, okay, whatever. And her editor's like, well, aren't you Jewish? She's like, hardly, And so she goes in with these open eyes. And I think at 22, right out of college, like all of us were, it's like, who do I want to be? And what am I doing? This is like the first time I'm playing adult. And there are a lot of questions. And I don't know if most people really deliberately construct an identity for themselves. I think we sort of get what we're given when we're born, and the influences of our parents, our community, whatever it is. So I actually think it's a pretty rare thing that somebody is deliberate about constructing an identity. And I felt like in writing this story, so she loves the way she's embraced by the women in the community, and realizes that she's always wanted that because she's come from such a public, austere community herself, that she wants that warmth and that embrace. And so it's more about kind of being mothered in a way. But then she just finds herself in it. And then, of course, it all comes into question when something horrific happens. And she's like, here's a community that I've trusted, I've loved, I've poured my heart and soul into for 10 years. And they've betrayed me in a way. And what do I do about that? I thought this was who I was. Do I figure out a way to stay, or do I just say, screw it and leave? And I'm not going to spoil anything so that you can read the book and you can, just discover what she chooses. But I think that that's realistic because, I think every community that we're part of shows its ugly side at some point. And we can't just keep hopping around and saying, well, I'm only going to take the good, because we're always going to face something that is less than good. And and it's like that with people too. I was talking to my kids who are all young adults about how in relationships, you have to choose to see the good in your partner because they're really going to annoy you at some point, whether it's just like socks on the floor or like they don't take the garbage out and you always have to do it or whatever it is. Like, are you going to focus on that, or are you going to focus on what you love about them? And it is a choice. And so I think a lot of this is about what you're choosing to focus on, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the importance on the community aspect, especially now. I feel that, we're a couple years out of, getting through the nitty gritty of COVID. And I feel that so many people, I hear that all the time, they're just longing for that sense of community, that sense of belonging. Yeah. And in an age where, we can so easily be connected to people all over the world, people really do feel lonely though. And yes. How, I guess I'm curious, was there any part of you that played out in that, in the community aspect? did you draw on from your own life? And, you know, did you have any times in your life where you didn't feel like you were connected to a community? And then, you know, the difference of being connected to a community, like Sally.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. And I can say a couple things. So, you know, one thing is that my marketing company, when I started it in 2007, is when Facebook was just getting started in the population. And I was noticing this trend that you mentioned, Jamie, about how we have this illusion of being connected, but it's behind screens. Like even you and I right now, I feel like I'm talking to you, but we are hours apart, you know, like we're not in the same place. So it's an illusion of being close, but I'm really sitting here alone, you know? And so my marketing premise was that businesses can grow from relationships and, you know, a great story and higher purpose. Like they want to do good, not just buy something from me, but really I care about you and let's have mutual benefit. So it's kind of been the philosophy that has driven my professional career. And as a person who is I'm a strong woman. I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time. I have a lot of opinions. You know, I have a lot of opinions, and I will say them. I will share them. I think it can be really lonely at the top.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have some wonderful friends, but I don't have that group of friends since kindergarten like my sister has, that, you know, they just went on like a girls' weekend together to celebrate their 50th birthdays. You know, that's not me. Like I have friends from decades ago, but I'm a lone warrior. And so I understand that need to belong, that desire for it. I also understand that desire to sort of beat your own drum and like do it your own way. You know, like I do not like anybody telling me what to do, but I really want to fit in. So I get it, you know, like I totally get it. So I think that these notions of community and belonging are universal, and I certainly feel them as a person, just like anybody else would. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I feel that especially women, the importance of that belonging and having community, it's not necessarily, I think so many people think of it just as friendship. You know, you talk about your sister, you know, they're going away for the 50th party. That is great. And there is that sense of belonging in there. But I feel, especially women, you know, sometimes you reach that stage in life where you just feel kind of lost. You get caught up in your family and work and things like that, and you're going through the motions and you feel like there's something missing, and sometimes you can't figure out what it is. And you need that higher purpose of, where do I belong? You know, I mean, and it's not anything against family or work, but there's something out there that you need to feel that connection with. And I feel so many times, I mean, I can tell when I don't have that. And for the longest time, I didn't realize that's what it was. I spent a really big chunk of time being predominantly a stay-at-home mom. And I knew I missed that when I was, you know, I used to do all kinds of fitness classes in the gym and things like that. And I had that sense of community with those people. And when I stepped away from that, that is the number one thing that I missed. And I knew I missed the people, but I was so confused because I'm like, but I have all these friends and I'm always doing something. But it's like that sense of, I felt real stagnant, if that made sense. Like you're not growing in any way. And I even think about that with Sally, you know, here she gets in this new community and she's growing and learning and exploring. And you have to find that niche that speaks to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And without that, it's just like there's that part of you that's missing. And I think of the word like evolving. Those communities, it's okay to have several. And it's okay that it brings out you evolving as a person, but it's okay to evolve and let go of a community and move on to something different, which I think is so freeing.
Yeah.
When you compare it to friendships.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's hard to do, because sometimes you do. I even think of your sister with her kindergarten friends. Sometimes you outgrow people, and that's fine. But there's that like, you know, how do I leave or whatever? And with community, you can you can outgrow things, and it's sometimes a really good thing, and find something else that you belong in. So I'm curious, as far as the community aspect, are there certain little life lessons woven in there that you want to share?
Well, I mean, possibly, I think, I wasn't trying to be preachy or say, this is what you must take away from the book. So I'm so curious to hear from readers what they do take away from the book, what resonates with them. I had a friend call me, she read an early version of the book, and I didn't know that she had an infidelity in her relationship in the past. And she's like, that was what struck her the most. And she was really struck by Sally's husband's reaction, because it wasn't what happened in my friend's marriage. And, I was like, okay, it was just like, it was sort of like all of a sudden it was truth telling, and we were, on a different level in our friendship, which was cool. But, I think that a story, is intended to be, once it leaves the author, whatever the reader takes from it. And I hope that people read about Sally and feel a kinship to her strength, but also start to think about how they construct their identity, and are they happy with it? And if not, what changes could they make so that they would be? I hope that they do see that. I have another friend who's also an author, a really talented author, and she is Catholic, and she said she never knew anything about the Orthodox Jewish community, and she just loved it. And I was like, that's a huge win, because this is a very specific community that many people don't know about, even other Jewish people. And to have it resonate and be a readable story for someone who's nowhere near that world, I think is really cool too. So, I think that it, we get, who knows what happens after this life. What we know is we have this one life, and we've got to make the most of it. And my husband laughs at me because I'm always like, what's the meaning of it all? Like, why are we here? Like, my kids laugh when I'm like driving, and I'm like, isn't it weird that we're like in these little boxes that we're moving down the road? They're like, you're so weird. And I'm like, it's just, life is so strange, and so I feel like we need to build really purpose-driven lives. And I hope that comes across in the book. And it's what I'm trying to do with my own too.
Absolutely. You're a deep thinker. I'm with you.
Yes.
You can hear people thinking, oh, here she goes again, but it's just, I'm the same way, but I think it helps you then, follow whatever path is for you in trying to figure out, well, what is my true identity? Because it is true. And I'm a mom of 4 kids too. It is impossible to be a child, be a parent, whatever, and not get somewhat molded into an identity by just, whether it's any sort of parent figures, but your siblings, your friends, your coaches, your teachers. I mean, that's life.
Yes.
But at some point, it's, wait a minute, who am I really though? I've been told I'm this, or I've been kind of pushed, in this direction, or this and that. And sometimes I feel it's scary to step out and explore and try new things when you are kind of doing it alone. If, I mean, I think of some of the communities that I've gotten involved in over the last few years, and it's so far removed from any of the communities that a lot of my people are involved in. And I don't know, there's that kind of cool factor to that. And it just makes me want to explore and try new things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how, like, Sally's identity shift went. And I'm curious because I know it's fiction, but I too, I've written 2 fiction, women's fiction books. You know what's crazy about it though, is when I look back now, I see things pop up in my life where it almost gives me chills, because it's like, did I know that then and I'm now realizing it?
That's so cool. That's really awesome.
It is. And then I'm like, okay, it was in this. I mean, there's a piece of you in every character in the book that there can't not be. Right?
Right. Yeah.
So have there been some real identity questions that you feel like maybe you've already been through in the past that maybe pop up for Sally? And how did that maybe play out in the book, or how was it driven? Maybe that's an easier question.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've always been Jewish, but I did become Orthodox and then I left it. So certainly she goes through a transformation when she chooses to become Orthodox. I don't know that there were that many similarities to how she does it versus how I did it. But I certainly know that world, and she's way more religious than I ever was. Although my family might tell you otherwise. But one thing I'll tell you what you said sparked was that, I think a lot of parents, they really want their kids to be what they are. It's sort of like a validation. And I've tried really hard to give my kids space to figure out who they are independent of anybody else. Even if that means they reject like their Jewish upbringing or whatever it is. And I've said to them, and this makes so much sense to me, that religion is a very personal pursuit. It's really between you and God, and you have to love it. You have to believe it in order to live it. How can anybody else tell you what to do? And so, if it doesn't resonate in here, then how can you sort of masquerade? And so, so I've told my kids that, and I believe that. And I think that Sally, is like that as well, that it's really got to fit for her. So when she asks questions about, well, I thought it was this, but now it looks like it's that. Is it still what I want? I think that that's a valid progression. I don't know if everybody admits it, but I think a lot of people go through that. And so even if they are in the religious world and they stay there, they have their moments of questioning where it's like, what am I doing? And is this really where I belong? But sometimes it's hard to make a change. So I think that it's not realistic for everybody to just up and leave and start out on a new path. But I wanted her to come into her own and feel strong about it and really choose right over wrong, and for her, which is really subjective. So that's what I was trying to do. But there's a lot of things of identity in the religious world that have to do with your outward appearance, like what you wear, whether it's modest or not, and how you appear to others. And so one thing I was really deliberate about with the book is her name is an English name. It's not a Hebrew name. And a lot of people, when they become religious in Judaism, and most Jewish people are given a Hebrew name when they're born. It's just sort of like a custom, but you don't really use it. You use it at services or something like that. But it's just sort of there. And so a lot of people, when they become Orthodox, they'll start going by their Hebrew name because it makes them feel like they've made the transformation. I never did. And I actually was told once by a rabbi's wife, you'll feel more authentic when you do. And I'm like, I have no plans to do that. So I was very, very deliberate in choosing an English name for her and not having her transform to a Hebrew name. And also her husband, Berry, who has always been Orthodox, and his name is a Hebrew name, but he takes an English like nickname from his Hebrew name. And I thought that made him kind of relatable, as opposed to, and he's always been religious and he has no questions about it, but he's with the modern world too, which was kind of fun. So those were deliberate choices for sure.
I like the word validation. And I was like, whoa, my eyes opened when you said how, like with our upbringing, how so many parents, it's almost like we seek the validation through our kids for them to be like us. I like that take on it, because a lot of parents expect kids to follow in their footsteps. Well, I like this. Of course you just like that, like whether it's sports or academics or in music or wherever. And I've never thought of it's more about the parents feeling validated in their own things, and how freeing it is just to let kids explore. And one thing I've been trying to do as a parent lately is when they ask things, just ask back, well, what do you think? What do you feel? And I feel it's just that way for them to, at a young age, oh, I am me. I can pick my own identity and stay true to myself. Right. And when just the whole validation and identity, it makes me think even more how it's more of how we live, instead of getting caught so much in, who am I, asking that question, which is a very important question, but what am I drawn to? Like, how do I live my life? It really does speak your identity. Truly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great way to parent, to ask, what do you think? Because I read an article once when my kids were younger about how, do you want your voice to be in their head when they're older, or their voice? And that was kind of a wake-up call, like, oh boy, I better think about that. And, yes, I want them to trust me. I hope I can be a resource for them, but they need to trust their own voice, because if they don't, they're going to always seek someone else's, and it may not be the right voice. It might be a dangerous voice. And so that's so brilliant to say, what do you think? It's an early lesson, but it's powerful.
Because I even feel it is hard just as an adult, even, with experience under your belt, to sometimes trust your voice.
Yes.
Because there are so many voices out there. Yeah. And it can be, and the younger kids learn that, the better. And speaking of Sally, here she is 22. It did make me think of, it is that time when you're still a kid. You yes. truly are. Yes. And that is that time of exploring new things. And it's also a time, though, where it can be scary to explore new things on your own.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think that you're right that 22, they say the brain isn't fully formed until 25. And then I heard maybe 27. I don't know. It keeps getting later. But, for sure, it's just sort of playing until you feel like you're really the adult. I teach a writing class. It's sort of my signature writing class called Finding Your Voice. And when I first taught it, it was finding your voice at midlife. And I got people in their 30s and people in their 80s. And I'm like, okay, let's get rid of the at midlife, because it's like just finding your voice. And it's, in theory, your writing voice, but it's really your confidence and it's your belief in yourself. And I hear over and over again, and I can say that I've said this too. I always wanted to write, but I was told, like my dad said, I'll pay for law school. I'm like, it's 4 times as much as my MFA. Could you pay for that? Which thankfully he did. But, we're told for so long to listen to the voices outside of ourselves. And if we're writers, that's a nice little hobby. Now go do something that's going to make you money. And so I have all these people coming to me who it's been calling to them for their whole lives. And they're like, I need to listen now. And so the class is a writing class, but it's really like therapy, because it's like, you have to understand what your voice is and separate it from other voices that might have interwoven with it, and understand what your voice is as a writer and have the courage to do it. And so I think it's a really big issue, especially for writers. And I hope that all of my books have that message of a strong, confident woman who believes in herself and makes hard choices because she knows it's right for her.
Exactly. I love that. And I even just thought a lot about journaling and how much we can discover about ourselves through that writing process, and how easy it is to shove that off, because I think so many people get caught, I don't have time, I'm busy. But what you can learn about yourself in the journaling process of things that, you really didn't have any idea. And just maybe sitting down with a question that you want to ask yourself every day. It sounds like, that's kind of weird, but I will do that sometimes. Just, you ask yourself a question and you start writing the answer, and all these other questions pop up, and this and this and that. And it's like, that's interesting. Like, where did all that stuff come from?
Yeah.
And it really is. Sounds silly, but I don't know. I'm really big on, the most important relationship is the one that you have with yourself. And how many of us really know ourselves? Like, take time and really take care and develop that relationship. And I feel so many people just, that's that self-care stuff, massages, the bubble baths. It's like, it's getting to know yourself. We think we know who we are, but if we really knew who we were, and we really focus on that relationship and take care of it and nurture it, we're a lot happier. We have that purpose and that meaning, and we are more confident. And I love that how you said it, kind of, you know, that writing and stuff, it almost turns more into therapy, because writing isn't just for authors.
Yeah.
It's for us.
Right.
It's self-discovery. So whether it's 4 lines a day or 4 pages or whatever. Yeah. I like that. How did, I'm curious, just how did Sally's family, how were they affected, and what pulls did it have on her? Because of, yeah.
So, you know, she's not close with her parents, and she has 2 sisters, and they're not super close. Her sisters are more like her parents, and she, you know, they're not happy about it. They think she's gone into this crazy old world, and it's you know, her dad's a very public person, so it's like, oh God, but they do go to her wedding and they embrace it and they make it, you know, a big happy family thing for the media. But her mom's parents, her grandparents, she reconnects with them on her own, sort of goes around her mom, and they're so happy that she's become religious and that she's embraced Judaism, and that they can have a relationship with a grandchild, and they end up moving to Chicago to be near her. So they become like her, you know, her anchor and her touchstone, and participate in a lot of her Shabbat dinners and holidays with her family, and, you know, that kind of thing. So that's really nice. And, you know, I thought a lot about when I was writing it, you know, Barry's family is lovely, but they're very peripheral. They're not really a part of the story. They're at the wedding, but that's like pretty much it. I feel like maybe they should have had more of a role in it, but I didn't think it was essential to this story. But people have been asking me for a part 2, and so maybe they'll factor into that. I don't know. So we'll have to see what happens next.
That's exactly what I thought. Oh, I see the sequel coming up. Barry's family, right?
Right.
Oh, sounds amazing. So, Woman of Valor is out. Where can we get our hands on it?
Anywhere you buy books. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere online. And I'm doing lots of book events. So if you want me to come speak to your book club, we do volume discounts from the publisher directly. I'm doing talks like all over the country over the next year. And I'm working on the next book, which is in revisions right now. I'm very excited about it. And it's not a sequel, but maybe that'll be after this.
Best of luck to you, Lynne, and all your future books. And definitely grab a copy of Women of Valor wherever books are sold. And also, just to note, I mean, beyond being a fiction writer, Lynne was also a journalist for 15 years. She wrote for magazines and newspapers around the world, and she has 2 poetry collections and 6 nonfiction books. And she also earned her MFA in creative writing from Goddard College in Vermont, which does enable her to teach at the university level. And in 2007, she created a marketing and public relations company, and she helps authors market and brand themselves. And she also teaches a lot of writing classes, and she coaches writers and leads writers' retreats every year, actually on Mackinac Island in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan every September. So if you want Lynne to maybe speak at your book club, she can do that over Zoom or possibly in person if you're in the area. Go to her website, lynnegolodner.com, and there's also a writer's discussion and guide for your book club if you just want to have that for your readers. Thank you so much for listening to Authentically Raw. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, jamie@jamieberris.com, and let me know what episodes resonate with you and why. Are you a people pleaser? If so, I need your help. Please, I'm writing a book about people pleasing titled The People Pleaser's Guide to Pissing People Off to improve your relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. And I'm looking for personal stories of how people pleasing has impacted your life, or suck the life out of you. Maybe people-pleasing has held you back, caused you to feel resent, regret, anger, powerlessness, or just plain exhaustion. Let me know how it's impacted your life. Who knows, maybe your story will inspire my writing and grace the pages in some shape or form in this handy-dandy little guide. Also, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Simply scroll down through the episodes and you will see where to do so. Want to learn more about life coaching? Head over to my website, jamieberris.com, and check it out. You can also follow me on social media at Jamie Berris for lots of inspiration and empowerment. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.